Good morning. I'm the Reverend Julie Ann Lepp. It is a pleasure to be with you this morning, and I'm grateful to serve as minister of this congregation in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Thank you for joining our online services. Ralph Waldo Emerson asked, "What is a weed? A plant whose virtues have never been discovered." Ralph Waldo Emerson believed that we can cultivate our own character, and through this cultivation become agents of good or evil in the world. Further cultivation of character is grounded in an unmediated experience of the sacred, one that occurs by looking inward, by finding the spark of the divinity around us and in us and among us. It is possible to have a direct experience of the sacred. Emerson's belief became a cornerstone of the Transcendentalist movement and also Unitarian Universalism. I'm so excited to be here with you today. Come, let us worship together. I have a special announcement, ding, 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 special announcement. We have a Unitarian Universalist Congregation annual meeting that will be at 11 a.m. following service today. We will need a quorum of 51 members to conduct the business of the meeting, so we encourage members to be present, and we hope that visitors and friends will also join us, and we will need members to actually log in to our Zoom meeting to attend the annual meeting. So we will discuss the upcoming budget and our slate of nominees for the board, as well as hear updates about our technology fundraiser and the success of our building renovation project. We are so grateful for everything that has occurred during this year with the strong leadership of our board, all the volunteers, and everything that this congregation has done to keep us together while apart. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning. I'm David Hirsch, and the current president of the board. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation. We are a religious community who commit ourselves to diversity. We hope to nourish human differences, those of gender, race, age, ability, sexual orientation, political views, culture, class, and religious belief. Welcome to all who treasure freedom of conscience and the search for truth. We promise to do our best to provide you a spiritual home. We extend a special welcome to our visitors today. We hope you follow our Facebook page to participate in Zoom and receive announcements about special events and our religious exploration classes. Please sign up for our weekly email. There should be a link in the comment section on our Facebook page where you can sign up. Also, families can follow our UUC Religious Exploration Facebook page. There are religious exploration classes for 4K through 9th grade and youth group every Wednesday online for middle school and high school. We're so glad you joined us today.
No, it's not.
It's unmuted.
Wait, it's not quite.
It's unmuted.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay. No. Wait, let's see if it really is.
It is.
You guys are good.
Okay.
Okay. The word for lighting the chalice today are by Ralph Waldo Emerson.
We light the chalice to celebrate our connection to wonder, and the interdependent web. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "The creation of 1,000 forests is in one acorn."
Okay. Now I have to join you. Our next reading is All of Nature is Sacred by Lorelei Greenwood Jones. For the love of all began with the world.
All of nature is sacred.
Every creature is a thinking, feeling being.
We are blessed with wondrous variety.
We are part of nature and every being on the planet. What we do to one affects the many.
In this web of existence, we are each a strand. Our pushing and pulling moves the fabric of our world.
Each bird and insect, each fish and four-legged creature, all are our siblings.
Let us treat them as we would one another, with compassion and dignity, with understanding and honor.
The love that we show each being radiates outward.
A beam of kindness and caring that can be felt with the heart.
And in turn, our hearts receive that love from each being, and it echoes onward to eternity.
Now is the time in our service where we share our deepest joys and concerns. If you have a joy or concern, you can share it in our chat on Facebook or here on Zoom. I'd like to light a candle for Alan Jackson, who continues in hospice. Thank you to those who have been visiting him, sending him cards, and encourage you to continue to reach out to those who cannot be with us during this time. Would also like to light a chalice to celebrate Violet Kilmurray, who grew up in our congregation. She is expecting a baby girl, and it was a joy to stop by her house and celebrate her upcoming joy. We light this candle for her. Joy from Marcia, she got a car yesterday to replace the totaled one. And Deb lights a candle for her brother Leonard. Today, he would have been 55. He left us 6 years ago. And Molly says, yay for Violet. They went to high school together. Ralph has a concern for Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank who are experiencing violence at this time. I'd also like to light a candle. As I've seen on Facebook, my friends here who have family in India, and just seeing the news in India of those who are struggling with the ravages of the pandemic, we light a candle of care that will be acknowledged by their government and that things will hopefully improve. Candle from Marcia. My second grandchild got married yesterday, and she'll view the videos later today. Yes, how we celebrate our different celebrations is different now in these times. I'd like to light a candle for all those graduates that are coming up. Haley Harder-Wall graduated yesterday from UWC. And not too long now, our high school graduates will be graduating. Next Sunday will be our flower communion, and we'll be celebrating graduates. If you have pictures that you would like to share during the service, that would be lovely. And I light this for Laurel, for my mom, who continues to become detached from today's world. Gloria, I am grateful for this community of people whose values I share. Gives me such solace in these days. Amen, Gloria. Me too. I'm grateful for our progressive and loving community. Speaking of, there is going to be Pride in the Park. I am so excited. It's going to be on June 12th, and we will have a booth. Yay, joy. Now light this final candle for all the joys and concerns too tender to escape the folds of our hearts. If you'll please join me in the words for closing joys and concerns. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Hi, we're Susan and Jerry O'Brien. We're performing Golden Breaks the Dawn from our UU hymnal.
This music was originally titled Leping, meaning peaceful joy, as composed by Hu Te-ai, who wrote it in 1934 in Peking, China.
And the English lyric we're singing today is by Frank Price.
Golden breaks the dawn, comes the eastern sun, over lake and lawn, sets its course to run. Birds above us fly, azures bloom below, through the earth and sky, life's great mercies flow.
Our reading today is called Blessed Are the Magic Makers by Teresa Honey Youngblood. Youngblood starts out her essay with a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson. It is a happy talent to know how to play. One glorious spring day, I was on a field trip with a group of middle schoolers, venturing a short way down the Florida National Scenic Trail. We were aiming for a small swimming hole about a mile in on a new section of the trail. But about halfway there, we heard and then saw an arresting sight up ahead. 2 large eastern diamondback rattlesnakes, who, upon hearing us come around the bend, had coiled their considerable bulk and were making a bone-chilling noise with their impressive tails, their heads held aloft half a foot off the ground. We felt awed and chastened to have encountered them. Still, after waiting in vain for 10 minutes for them to move on, we turned and went back the way we came, intending to find an alternative route to the spring. But the alternative path we chose was through a section of grass that, while free of venomous snakes, was full of very large, very sharp sand spurs, a fact that we had somehow missed until our whole group was a ways in. We could see the main path to the swimming hole ahead, but we had to pick our way through the spurs to get there. Behind us, of course, were the rattlesnakes. In the midst of our homegrown Silacarbidus, what did the youth do? They started playing. A few of the more athletic youth sprinted ahead and then cheered the rest of us on as they picked the spurs from their socks and skin. As one made her way out of the pokey grass, she joyfully tossed her tennis shoe to the classmate wearing flip-flops. A few held hands in a vertical line and danced their way through, the first saving the 2 behind from the brunt of the burrs. Neurochemically, panic and euphoria are kissing cousins. Blessed are the magic makers, often our children and youth, and some lucky adults who retain the charm, who can transmute one to the other in the most unexpected and needed moments.
So today we are talking about Ralph Waldo Emerson. And this is not Where is Waldo? This is Ralph Waldo Emerson, the Transcendentalist writer who was a reluctant minister. He believed that we could find wonder and joy and wisdom through our own experiences. He did not think that we needed a priest or an organized religion or a book or a tradition to guide our way. Emerson's belief became the cornerstone of the Transcendentalist movement. And he did not start out to be the leader of that movement. In fact, he accepted the word transcendentalism very grudgingly. He began his career in ministry steeped in the traditional theology of Unitarianism, having no previous reason to doubt its truth. But it was his experience in that pulpit, his life experience, that he began to chafe at Unitarianism, which even in that day was more liberal than many of its cousins. While Emerson related to the reason in Unitarianism, he complained about the stilted sermons of traditional Unitarian preachers that avoided emotion and wisdom of natural theology and experience. And he began in service to several different churches out of concern for his health. And it also gave him a chance to develop his own interpretations of scripture. and doctrine, since he wasn't beholden to the views of one congregation. He pursued interest in natural sciences, philosophy, literary criticism, and that would also inform his theology. When he finally did take a church, he was married to his extremely ill first wife. And after her death, he became extremely disaffected with tradition and the daily offices of ministry, especially giving communion. He thought that that just didn't make a whole lot of sense. And he was convinced in the immediate immanence of God and human relationship, and increasingly skeptical about the need for a traditional religion. So he re-engaged with New England after going on some travels and trying to heal himself. He preached on an interim basis with several congregations, and he returned to his ancestral home with a new bride, ready to engage with his learning with renewed vigor. And he really, it was funny when I was listening to someone talk about Emerson, apparently he was so convicted that people would cross the street so that they would not have to deal with talking to him on the street. But he was also such an exceptional speaker that people who were maybe not as educated, they interviewed a washerwoman. Well, I hate that term. Anyway, it was someone who did the washing. She said, I didn't really know what he was talking about, but man, it was like he believed that I was just as good as he was. And that egalitarianism and that belief in the goodness and inherent worth of others, we can see trickling down into our tradition today. And when he started inviting people into his home, and there was a symposium of people to talk about the intellectual trends of America. It wasn't just a bunch of men. There were also women invited into that company, which was rare in the 1830s. You had, it was called the Transcendental Club. You had George Ripley, who would become the editor of Boston Quarterly Review. You had Bronson Alcott, the educational reformer, whose Temple School anticipated many of the modern methods of education. You had Theodore Parker, who became a huge abolitionist preacher in Boston. James Freeman Clarke, who was editor of the Western Messenger, and women such as Margaret Fuller, Elizabeth Hoare, and Sarah Ripley, who also participated. Emerson edited the Dial, which Margaret Fuller wrote in, and many writers from the Transcendentalist movement spread those messages of egalitarianism, finding the sacred in nature. And while it took time for Emerson to break with tradition, one of the things that he did that just tickles me to death is he, at that time, Harvard was actually a fairly conservative institution compared to what it is today. And he gave the graduating class of 1838 of Divinity School this address called Emerson's Unitarian Transcendentalism. And he made two key points. He dismissed the miracles in the New Testament, and he claimed the power of the human soul to apprehend the truth of God and nature. He also called the ministers a bunch of frozen chosen, and basically told them to get out of their pulpits and go out in nature. And so he wasn't very popular at that point with that address. So we think about, how history affects today. And, one of our sources is that direct experience of transcending wonder. And you can think of it as a naturalistic mysticism, a knowing by experiencing. Emerson argued that the spark of divinity is in experiences and nature and all things. And he divided mysticism into three different characteristics. First, mystical knowledge is mysterious, not completely within our power to grasp. He wrote, "Man is a stream whose source is hidden." And he also said that mysticism is a sense of knowing or joining with the ultimate reality. You think of people meditating or finding that ultimate truth, whether it is God as we understand the world or it is connection with nature. Thirdly, Emerson believed that we cannot experience that we cannot create mystical experiences or bring them about. They come in their own time. They come from connection and wonder. And he really shaped American thought. You know, we think about this emphasis on individualism, and that's a huge American disposition, this thought that we can find our own truth through spiritual exploration, that you don't need organized religion or a creed or a minister or a book to show you how to experience the holy. Last week, we heard from Peter Mayer that everything is holy now. And you know, wisdom can be found in the lessons of nature or in life or just by paying attention. I think about that I'm planting my native garden right now, and it was such a joy to go to Beaver Creek and I found little caterpillars and gave them back to the volunteers at Beaver Creek, and they'll eventually go into the butterfly sanctuary that they have there. And just touching those green things. And here in Wisconsin, feeling the crunch of snow or the bite of wind on your face, it makes you feel alive. Running your hand along the water as you canoe or you slip into the lake. Listening to the sound of lapping waves or bullfrogs at night, their calls echoing in the darkness. People like Emerson and Henry David Thoreau believe that the wild and natural places are necessary for the spirit of humanity to be whole, for us to wholly experience life. We don't need to cut ourselves away with our screens or our busyness, but finding ways to integrate that into life. I was watching TV, which ironically that I'm talking about this, but I was watching TV the other day, and there was a show called Planet Earth, which many of you have probably seen. And this was Planet Earth 2, and it was talking about nature in cities and how we can construct our cities to be more integrated with nature. They were showing how little turtles, you know, they come from their eggs and they get confused by the lights. Instead of going towards the shore, they go towards traffic or they lose their way. And I know that a lot of beaches in Florida think about that and try and protect those turtles. And there's Singapore, who has really integrated nature. They have these huge steel structures that they've covered with plants and that create habitat. They put trees on their buildings so that you have vertical habitat for, and it also creates a sense of peace. I know when I'm in a city without trees, I get tense and I want to look at more than concrete and steel. So I urge you to get outside, you know, feel the wind on your face, see what wonder and joy you can find. Wendell Berry told us, "When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds." And so I know that when I have felt grief and when I have felt heavy, some of the places that hold me are water, you know, to float in water and to hear the sound of it in my ears, have the sun on my face, and just to be, you know, to lay on my back and do a back float. And it's almost like being cradled in a womb. And you experience the world differently when you hear through water. And I think of that wonder and that almost heartbeat sound as the water goes into your ears. When my kids were young, there was a weekend that Tom and Laurel Kiefer invited us to come spend time at their farm. And if you haven't been out to Laurel's farm, I encourage you to go out there. It's a beautiful and magical place. We walked around the farm's lovely hills, learning the names of plants and trees. Kendra and Aaron were younger. They were trotting along the creek, baaing after the sheep and romping up the hills like wild people. There's a magical quality to a space like that that feels ancient and welcoming. We hiked to the crest of the hill as the Sun started to set and sat in the tall grasses, watching the sky change color, just like a magic paintbrush had decorated the skies in oranges and reds. And there was that moment, that quiet moment, even though it was probably short, it felt like it stretched and filled places inside us, touching and moving us in a different way. It even quieted 2 young children as we listened to the wind and observed the palette of our gorgeous planet, listening and touching the world around us. In the 19th century, Ralph Waldo Emerson and other transcendentalists believed in the spark within, the divine spark which connects all things. And thinking that we can't do this through reason alone. And Unitarians, we love to wrestle with ideas and talk about things and engage with our minds. But Emerson said, you know, that's good, but I want you to experience things, just like we experience the beauty of music. We experience the joy of jumping on a trampoline or you know, seeing kittens. The Hirsches are raising little foster kittens, you know, that meow, meow, meow of little baby kittens. We think about that direct experience. When the holy is in everything and everyone, the only thing that separates us is our own perceptions. And, you know, we think about the UU tradition. This summer, we are going to have our UU General Assembly. And I know there has been talk at some point of including the inherent worth and dignity of every being instead of just every person in our first principle. And so we continue to wrestle with how we can be connected. The holy isn't rectified to one sanctified space. I'm sitting right here on our UUC, in our UUC sanctuary with my computer in front of me. And I look around and miss all of your presence here, but I'm connected to you through the internet or when we go on walks. And sacred space isn't just in a building, it's between us and among us. It's our love, it's our connection to one another. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote in the essay Nature in 1836, he said, "Standing on the bare ground, my head bathed by the blithe air, uplifted into infinite space, all mean egotism vanishes. I become a transparent eyeball." I just imagine this eyeball. I think that would wake me up. I become a transparent eyeball. I am nothing, I see all. The currents of the universal being circulate through me. I am part or parcel of God. Now, is that radical? It was. It might still be radical to say you are a part of God instead of I am worshiping the God on high is very different. It's a different way of engaging. I think of some of my most profound experiences and epiphanies, and they've certainly been in nature. Have you rafted through the mist of a rising river or in a canoe and felt a part of that mystery? Have you felt awe by watching a storm come off Lake Superior or at the ocean's edge? Have you lain in warm summer grass, looked up at the bright blue sky, and felt peace in that moment? There are so many memories that can arise from times in nature or wild spaces that have held us, maybe with a different pace of time. When I was a little girl, I lived in South Carolina in Irmo, and we were lucky to have pine woods behind us. And in those days, we didn't have parents accompanying us as much as kids do today. And definitely I was that 70s kid. I was about 6 or 5 and would get up before everyone else because I knew it was quiet, and I'd grab my breakfast and I would run out to the woods with my dog, Bo. Now, Bo owned the neighborhood. He was not a fence dog like you would have today, much to our neighbors' chagrin. He owned the neighborhood, and he was some mutt mix, but man, I love that dog. He was my very best friend, and we had so many adventures together. And we would go into that pine woods at the break of dawn, and it was already hot. In South Carolina, it didn't matter. It was humid, probably 100% humidity. And I would go down those paths, and the sun would be rising, and I'd go past the blackberries and grab blackberries and honeysuckle, and I would hear the sounds of squirrels and my dog panting because it was hot. And we would make our way through those woods in wonder and quietude. And eventually we would come to what I would call the Great Clay Hill, the Great Mountain. And of course, going back and as an adult, it's just this little hill, but it was really big when I was little. And it had lots of ruts and from water washing down that mud and rocks. And sometimes you'd find tadpoles, and that was really cool, to find tadpoles in the middle of this desert of mud. And I would just hope that they would survive and not, not evaporate away somehow in the heat of summer. And Bo was my protector. He, in South Carolina, unlike here, there were 5 bajillion snakes, and he would watch out for me. He was my little guardian, and he would make sure that the snakes didn't bother me as we made our way through. And so he would pick up speed usually as we went down this hill. And at the bottom of the hill, there was a copse of trees overhanging the river. And he knew that there was water and that we were going to get out of this stupid heat. And he'd start barreling down the hill. And I was usually wearing flip-flops because I was not super sensible, of course. And so I'd start flip-flopping down the hill. And flip-flopping is a verb, by the way, if you wear flip-flops and you run in them. And I would run down that hill, and somehow I did not break my leg. And we would go down and go down, and I would get so excited. And then we'd get to the shade of those trees. And in the shade of those trees, somehow it was cold for my little South Carolina body. It was going to be really cold in that river. And I know now that it's not really cold water, but it felt really cold to me. And there was like a little rivulet that went off of the main broad river. And we had to cross that. Now, Bo didn't care. He is a dog. He's just like, he gets in that water and he starts going. And of course, the water comes flying back at me. And I'm like, but I really want to get to those rocks in the middle of the river. So I put my foot in, and my ankle hurts. I'm like, oh, it's cold. But then you start going really fast so your ankles don't hurt, and you run across and hope that there's not any snakes on the water. You go really fast. And then you get to the other side, and the mist is coming off the river, and the sun is breaking through the mist. And my dog is just like, yeah, I got this. He goes out into the flat rocks in the middle of the river, and he knows we're going to hang out for hours on that sunny place. And when you're out there, time is different. Now I'm like, oh, I have a Zoom meeting at 11, or I have to check my email. But when you're outside and experiencing nature in all of its fullest, there was only the grumble of my stomach that would tell me that it might be time to come home, or maybe some neighborhood kids who would take my spot on the river, sadly. But it was such a magical blessing to have that spot on the river. And I think back, all of these texts. Emerson is hard to read. He made lots of different points, and he was kind of and it's hard to read things from the 19th century, but these aphorisms that he gives us, like the one that I said at the beginning about the weed, like weed is a plant waiting to happen or waiting to be known, and so many beautiful things. And I think about this one person in The idea that he said, you know what, take your tradition and put it away. Get out of your house and go walk. Go be you. Trust in your wisdom. Trust in your experience of the holy, because you matter. And hey, women, you matter too. And hey, the slavery idea, it's really stupid. And you know, all of these experiences of trusting our intuition and believing in the power of the individual to discern truth, think about how that has affected our democracy. Think about how that has affected our literature and even religion here in America. We tend to be, even in traditions that are more orthodox, there's still more individualism that you see here. And we think about people like Jesus, the great teachers who went into the desert to seek answers, Siddhartha, who sought spiritual truth while meditating in nature, teaching us that wild spaces can offer us a chance to reframe our understandings, to seek new insights and chances for transformation. You know, we're lucky here in the Chippewa Valley to have wild spaces close to us. We have eagles and foxes here at Half Moon Lake, hiking at Lowe's Creek, and other green spaces. One time I was visiting my brother in Florida, and I don't know about you, but I've always had the dream of swimming with dolphins, and I never went to one of those little places where you swim with dolphins. And so I kept hoping that maybe going to the beach, I would see these dolphins who are as smart or smarter than we are. And if you've read Douglas Adams, you know, they pretty much know the answer to life, the universe, and everything. So anyway, I was visiting my brother and I saw a pod of dolphins playing in the waves. And we were bouncing on this little red boat with the wind in my hair and sun on my face, and just watching them sail through the water and accompany us as we were going through their space, their element. I felt closer to life. You know, I felt like, wow, these beings are intelligent. You know, we talk about getting in touch with extraterrestrial life. You know, we need to learn how to speak to dolphins, and I know we're trying. And you know, we think about our great apes who speak, like Coco, who could sign, and there's so much wisdom around us. We know now that even trees speak to one another, and we seek to understand, we seek to connect, and remember that we are also a part of nature. You know, so often we separate ourselves as we can build our still structures and we can tear down the rainforest because we're people. Well, guess what? That affects us. It affects life. And this is the nest that we have. You know, sometimes to discover what lies inside of you, you have to take a walk, take a pilgrimage, if you will. Those who seek answers from the top of the mountain from a guru or in the ivory tower sometimes find that the wisdom is not in this high place, but in the journey. You know, it's in the road, the blisters, the gas stations, the times where you're hurrying from place to place, but suddenly find a wonderful conversation at a roadside rest stop. We learn resiliency and perseverance and perhaps patience with the process of our change. I'll end with these words from Ralph Waldo Emerson. Nature says thou shalt keep the air, skate, swim, walk, ride, run. When you have worn out your shoes, the strength of the sole leather has passed into the fiber of your body. I measure your health by the number of shoes and hats and clothes that you have worn out. He is the richest man who pays the largest debt to his shoemaker. So what he's saying is that we need to have worn out shoes and hats and get out of our comfort zones and experience the world. And after this long pandemic, I know many of us are hungry for the beauty of nature. I'm so grateful to be here with you in this place where we value our interdependent web of life, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and the democratic process where your vote matters, and like today in our annual meeting, and where we encouraged everyone to vote in our political elections. You matter, and you were born right the first time. Amen. So now is the time for our giving. And what's very important in our congregation is we share of our gifts. We don't buy Cadillacs for staff or have a gilded building. We make sure to live out our principles. And our 50-50 Share the Plate recipient is the Wellness Shack. And you can donate online or text to give at 84321. And the Wellness Shack helps people who are living with mental health struggles and offers a place of refuge. The offering will now be given and gratefully received.
Please join in saying the words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Our closing words are by Norman Naylor. Our eyes and minds turn now toward the ordinary, leaving this space made sacred by our presence. Take with you at least some seed of understanding, hope, and courage, and drop it into the confusion of the world. Nourish the seed that it might grow as a tree of life, giving shelter to the weary and hope to the despairing. Be yourself a branch of the tree of life. Amen. In Zoom today, there will be a brief period of joy, for joys and concerns and conversation. We ask that all members please stay or log in to participate in the annual meeting at 11 o'clock. We need a quorum of 51 members. Let us live out our fifth principle, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. The service has ended. Go in peace, but stay for the annual meeting.